Hey, my name's Miles Turner. I'm 29, and I've been living in this quiet suburb on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon for about 3 years now. It's one of those places where the houses are all similar. Modest one-story rentals with faded paint and small yards that nobody really maintains. My life? It's nothing special. I work as a repair technician at a local appliance shop called Fix It Quick. We handle everything from leaky air conditioners and busted refrigerators to glitchy washers that spin like they're possessed. It's steady work, pays the bills, but it's not exactly the kind of job that gets you excited in the morning. Most days, I show up at 8 a.m., fix a few things, deal with grumpy customers who swear their machine just stopped working out of nowhere, and head home by 6 p.m. if I'm lucky. Home for me is a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a complex that's seen better days. The walls are thin, the carpet's worn, and the kitchen sink drips no matter how many times I tighten the faucet. I don't mind though, it's cheap and it's mine. After my ex-girlfriend Sarah left 2 years ago, I kind of retreated into myself. We were together for 4 years, thought we had something solid, but one day she just said she needed more space and packed her bags. No big fight, no drama, just gone. Since then, I've kept things simple. Work, the occasional beer with my buddies from the shop, guys like Tom and Javier who mostly talk about sports and bad dates, and nights spent scrolling through my phone or watching old reruns on a grainy TV. I don't go out much, don't date. It's easier that way. That Friday night was no different. I'd pulled a late shift fixing a commercial fridge at a diner downtown. The owner kept hovering, complaining about how long it was taking, but I got it done. By the time I clocked out, it was pushing 11 p.m. The sky had opened up with one of those sudden Oregon rain showers, cold, relentless drops that soaked through my jacket as I walked to my beat-up Ford pickup in the parking lot. I drove home with the wipers slapping back and forth, the radio tuned to some classic rock station playing faded hits from the 80s. When I got back to the apartment, I kicked off my boots, tossed my keys on the counter, and headed straight for the cabinet where I keep a bottle of cheap whiskey. Poured myself a couple of fingers worth, neat, and sipped it while staring out the window at the rain pounding the pavement. The living room window was cracked open. I'd left it that way earlier because I like the sound of rain at night. It drowns out the silence. I didn't bother closing it. Who would bother in this neighborhood? I finished the drink, feeling the warmth spread through my chest, and shuffled to the bedroom. Stripped down to my boxers and an old t-shirt, climbed under the covers, and let the exhaustion pull me under. I don't remember dreaming. Just black, heavy sleep. The next morning, Saturday, came too soon. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, hitting my face like a spotlight. I groaned, rolling over to check the time on my phone. 9:15 a.m. Not bad for a weekend. But something felt off. The bed was warmer than usual on the other side, like someone had been there. And there was a faint scent in the air, something clean, like soap mixed with a hint of lavender. Not my usual musty apartment smell. My eyes were still blurry from sleep, but I could hear it now. Soft, steady breathing next to me. Not mine. Heart pounding, I turned my head slowly. There, curled up under the blanket right beside me, was a woman. A complete stranger. Her dark brown hair spilled across the pillow, her cheeks flushed slightly from the chill in the room. She was wearing my old button-up shirt, the one I use for yard work, faded blue with a tear at the cuff. It hung loosely on her frame, and she was huddled in a fetal position, like she was trying to make herself as small as possible. Her face was pale, delicate features softened in sleep, but there was something fragile about her, like she'd been through hell and was just barely holding on. I froze. My brain short-circuited for what felt like an eternity, maybe 5, 10 seconds, but it stretched out. Was this a dream? A prank? Panic surged through me. I bolted upright, yanking the blanket back without thinking, exposing her more. She stirred immediately, her eyes fluttering open in confusion, then widening in terror as she saw me. "Who the hell are you?" I blurted out, my voice louder than I intended, echoing in the small room. "How did you get in here?" She sat up quickly, clutching the shirt closed at her chest, her face draining of color. Tears welled up in her eyes almost instantly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling, barely audible. "Please, don't call the police. I didn't mean to. I just needed somewhere safe for the night. Just one night. I scrambled out of bed, putting distance between us, my back against the dresser. My mind raced. Check for missing stuff. Wallet, still on the nightstand. Phone, charging on the floor. Keys in the living room. Nothing seemed gone, but who was she? How? You broke in? What the? The window, she said quickly, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. In the living room, it was open. It was raining so hard last night, and my car ran out of gas a block away. I was going to sleep in it, but it was freezing. I saw the light on and the window. I just needed to get warm. I swear I didn't touch anything. I was going to leave before you woke up. Please, just let me go. Her words tumbled out in a rush, laced with desperation. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept properly in days, maybe weeks. There were faint bruises on her wrist, peeking out from under the sleeve, and a small scratch on her cheek. Not fresh, but recent enough to make me pause. She wasn't lying about the cold. The room was chilly from the open window. But still, this was insane. A stranger in my bed? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady my breathing. Part of me wanted to yell to demand she leave right then. But another part, the one that saw the fear in her eyes, the way her hands shook, held back. She wasn't a threat. She looked broken. Okay, I said finally, my voice calmer but still edged. Just sit there, don't move. I grabbed a robe from the closet and tossed it to her, then backed out of the room to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water, my hands unsteady, and brought it back. She was still on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, watching me warily. Here, I said, setting it on the nightstand. Drink this, and start from the beginning. Who are you, really? And why here? She took the glass with trembling fingers, sipping slowly. Her eyes met mine, full of gratitude mixed with shame. My name's Helen. Helen Shaw. I'm 33. And I didn't know where else to go. I sat there on the edge of the bed, watching her sip the water like it was the first real kindness she'd seen in a while. The room felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken questions. Helen Shaw. 33 years old. Her name hung in the silence between us, and I could see the exhaustion etched into her features. The dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as if carrying an invisible weight. I rubbed my temples, trying to process it all. A stranger in my apartment, in my bed, wearing my shirt. This wasn't how my Saturdays usually started. Helen, I said finally, my voice steady but low. Tell me everything, from the beginning. No shortcuts. She set the glass down carefully, her fingers lingering on it like she needed something to hold on to. I'm from a small town about an hour east of here, Gresham. I was an art teacher at the local high school. Loved it, actually. The kids, the colors, watching them create something from nothing. Her voice cracked a little and she paused, staring at the floor. But my marriage, it wasn't what it seemed. My husband, Mark, he started off charming, but over time, it turned ugly. Controlling at first, then violent? I leaned forward, not interrupting. She rolled up the sleeve of my shirt just enough to show a fresh bruise on her forearm, purple and angry. This is from last week. He found out I was planning to leave, and he lost it. Said if I ever tried to run, he'd make sure I regretted it. I've been driving around since then, sleeping in my car mostly. Motels when I could afford it, but money's running low. Last night, the rain was pouring, my gas tank hit empty a block away, and I couldn't take the cold anymore. Your window was open. I swear I wasn't going to stay long. Just warm up. But I must have passed out on the couch and wandered in here somehow. I'm so sorry. Her story hit me like a gut punch. I'd seen stuff like this on the news, but never up close. Part of me wanted to call the cops anyway, let them handle it. But the fear in her eyes, it was real. Raw. Have you gone to the police before? I asked. She nodded weakly. Once. Got a restraining order, but he ignored it. He's got friends in town, knows how to track me. I just need to disappear for a bit, find a job, save up. Please, Miles, if that's your name, don't turn me in. I'll leave right now if you want. I stood up, pacing the room. My mind raced. What if she was lying? What if this brought trouble to my door? But looking at her huddled there like a scared animal, I couldn't do it. Fine, I said after a long pause. You can stay for a few days until you figure something out, but no more surprises, and you sleep on the couch from now on." Relief washed over her face, fresh tears spilling. "Thank you, I won't be any trouble, I promise." I showed her the bathroom, handed her a clean towel and some spare clothes. Sweats and a hoodie that were too big for her, but better than nothing. While she showered, I busied myself in the kitchen, frying eggs and toasting bread. It felt weird, making breakfast for two in my solitary space. The sizzle of the pan drowned out my thoughts for a moment. When she emerged, her hair damp and face scrubbed clean, she looked even more vulnerable. We ate in silence at the small table, the rain from last night still dripping from the eaves outside. Afterward, she insisted on washing the dishes. "It's the least I can do," she said, her voice a bit stronger now. I watched her for a second, then nodded and headed to the living room to close that damn window properly. The couch was rumpled where she'd probably started the night. I straightened it out, tossing a blanket over it. This was temporary, I told myself, just helping someone in need. The first few days blurred together in an awkward rhythm. Helen kept to herself mostly, staying in the apartment while I went to work. I'd come home to find the place tidier, the counters wiped down, the trash taken out, dishes done. She didn't touch my stuff, didn't pry. In the evenings, she'd sit by the window with a notebook I'd given her, sketching quietly. I caught glimpses, simple drawings of rain-streaked streets, a lone car under a street lamp, abstract shapes that looked like swirling emotions. One night, after a long day fixing a stubborn AC unit at an office building, I collapsed on the couch with a beer. Helen was in the kitchen heating up some soup she'd made from whatever was in the fridge. "You don't have to do that," I said. She shrugged, bringing over 2 bowls. "I like keeping busy, it helps." We ate together for the first time since that morning. The conversation started slow, about the weather, my job. Then she opened up a bit more. "Art was my escape," she said. "Back home, I'd paint for hours after arguments. It was the one thing he couldn't take from me." I nodded, not sure what to say. "Sounds tough. I've had my share of bad days, but nothing like that." She looked at me curiously. "What about you? Why Portland? You seem like the type who could be anywhere." I hesitated, then shared a little. Grew up in Seattle, moved here after college for a job that fell through, stuck around. Broke up with my ex a couple years back. She wanted more excitement, I guess. Now it's just me and the repairs. Helen smiled faintly, the first real one I'd seen. Repairs aren't so bad. Sometimes fixing things is easier than fixing people. That night, as she curled up on the couch with a blanket, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her presence was strange, but not unwelcome. It filled the empty spaces in the apartment, the quiet that used to press in on me. I started looking forward to coming home, wondering what small change she'd made that day. A vase of wildflowers from the yard on the table. A note saying, "Thanks for the soup ingredients." Little things. But it wasn't all smooth. There were moments of tension. One evening, a loud knock at the door made her freeze, her face paling. It was just the neighbor borrowing a tool, but it took her hours to relax after. I saw the scars, not just the physical ones fading on her skin, but the deeper ones. The way she flinched at sudden noises, how she double-checked the locks before bed. I didn't push for more details, but I could feel her story unfolding in the silences. As the days turned into a week, then 2, Helen started to thaw. She'd ask about my day, share bits of hers, like how she used to teach kids to draw their dreams. I'd listen, and for the first time in years, the apartment didn't feel so lonely. I caught myself buying extra groceries, things I thought she might like, fresh fruit, a sketch pad from the dollar store. It was subtle, but something was shifting. Not romance, not yet. Just 2 people sharing a space, starting to see each other. By the end of the first month, things had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. If normal included sharing your space with a woman who'd broken in during a rainstorm. Helen's bruises had faded to faint yellow shadows, and she'd started smiling more, small ones that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She helped me tackle the overgrown patch of dirt behind the apartment that passed for a backyard. We'd spend weekends out there, her kneeling in the soil planting daisies and lavender while I hauled bags of mulch from the hardware store. "These will brighten the place up," she'd say, her hands dirty but her voice lighter. I'd nod, watching her work, feeling a quiet satisfaction in seeing her relax. Evenings, we'd split a pizza or whatever I picked up on the way home, sitting on the couch watching old movies, classics like Casablanca or something mindless on Netflix. I kept my distance, though. No deep talks, no accidental touches. She was still a guest, temporary, but damn if the apartment didn't feel less empty with her around. The threats from her ex loomed in the background, but they hadn't materialized yet. I'd installed a deadbolt on the door and made sure the windows latched properly. Helen seemed grateful, though she never said much about it. She was getting stronger, physically at least. She'd walk to the corner store for groceries, come back with fresh bread or fruit, insisting on cooking simple meals like pasta with tomato sauce or grilled cheese. "It's my way of paying you back," she'd explain, and I'd let her even though I knew it was more for her own sense of control. One Saturday afternoon, about 6 weeks in, everything shattered. I'd pulled an extra shift at the shop, fixing a series of malfunctioning dryers for a laundromat owner who kept changing his mind about what he wanted. By the time I wrapped up, it was pushing 5 p.m. The sky overcast with that gray Oregon haze that promised more rain. I drove home tired but content, thinking about the leftover Chinese in the fridge and maybe convincing Helen to watch a game with me. As I turned onto my street, though, my stomach dropped. There was a black SUV parked right in front of the building, sleek, out of place in this rundown neighborhood. The engine was off, but the windows were tinted too dark to see inside. I pulled up behind it, grabbing my toolbox from the passenger seat out of habit, and approached the door. It was ajar, just a crack, but enough to send alarm bells ringing in my head. Pushing it open slowly, I called out, "Helen, you okay?" The living room was dim, the curtains drawn. She was there, backed against the wall near the kitchen, her face as white as a sheet. Her whole body was trembling, hands pressed flat against the plaster like she was trying to disappear into it. "Miles," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's him, my husband. He found me." Before I could respond, the door slammed open behind me. A man burst in, tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and a face twisted in rage. He was in his late 30s maybe, wearing a leather jacket that strained against his build. His eyes locked on Helen immediately, narrowing to slits. "There you are, you bitch," he growled, his voice low and venomous. "Thought you could hide? I've been looking everywhere for you." He turned to me then, sizing me up with a sneer. "And who's this? Your new boyfriend? You been shacking up with this loser?" Adrenaline surged through me. I stepped forward, positioning myself between him and Helen. "Get out," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. My heart was hammering, but I couldn't let it show. "This is my place. You're trespassing." He laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the walls. "Trespassing? That's rich coming from the guy hiding my wife." He advanced a step, fists clenched. "Helen, get your ass over here. We're going home." She whimpered behind me, pressing closer to the wall. I could feel her shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. "No," she said, barely audible. "Please, leave me alone." That set him off. He lunged forward, shoving me hard in the chest. I stumbled back but caught myself, grabbing the edge of the table. "You think you can keep her?" he snarled, raising a fist. "I'll drag her out if I have to." I didn't think, I reacted. My hand shot to my pocket for my phone, dialing 911 as I dodged his swing. "Police?" I said into the receiver, loud enough for him to hear. "There's an intruder in my apartment. He's violent. Send someone now." I rattled off the address, keeping my eyes on him. He hesitated, his face flushing redder. "You called the cops? You little shit." He grabbed a lamp from the side table and hurled it at the wall, shattering it into pieces. Helen screamed, covering her head. He turned back to her. "This ain't over, Helen. I'll be back. You can't run forever." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. He cursed under his breath, glancing at the door. "You'll regret this," he spat at me, then bolted out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. The room fell silent except for Helen's sobs. She slid down the wall, collapsing into a heap on the floor, her body racked with tremors. I knelt beside her, hesitant at first, then wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, clutching my shirt like a lifeline. "He's gone," I whispered. "You're safe." The police arrived minutes later, two officers who took my statement, Helen's tearful account, and photos of the damage. They confirmed the restraining order was still active and promised to track him down for violating it. "Stay inside tonight," one said. "We'll increase patrols in the area." After they left, Helen was still shaking. I helped her to the couch, wrapping a blanket around her. "I'm so sorry," she kept repeating. "I never meant to drag you into this. I should have left sooner." I sat beside her, holding her hand. It was cold, clammy. "Hey, stop. This isn't your fault. That guy's the problem, not you." For the first time, I saw the full weight of her fear, the years of abuse etched into her. And in that moment, something shifted in me. I couldn't just let her face this alone. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "We'll get through this, together." She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed but grateful. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." "Because no one deserves to live like that," I replied. "And I care what happens to you." We sat like that for hours, her head eventually resting on my shoulder as the adrenaline faded. The incident had cracked open the walls between us, forcing us to confront the reality of her past. From that night on, things changed. We talked more about her fears, my own quiet loneliness, the small hopes we both harbored for something better. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the start of healing. The weeks following that nightmare with Mark blurred into a haze of paperwork, phone calls, and cautious steps forward. I threw myself into helping Helen navigate the fallout, starting with the basics. The morning after the incident, I sat with her at the kitchen table, a fresh pot of coffee between us, and pulled up numbers for local women's shelters and legal aid on my laptop. "We need to make this official," I said. "Get a stronger order in place so he can't come near you." She nodded, still pale but determined, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. We called a hotline first. A calm voice on the other end walked us through options. By afternoon, we'd connected with a pro bono lawyer from a nonprofit in downtown Portland, a no-nonsense woman named Carla who specialized in domestic violence cases. Carla was a godsend. Over video calls, she reviewed Helen's old restraining order, which had lapsed during her time on the run, and filed for an emergency protective order based on the police report from that night. "We'll get an ex parte hearing," she explained. "No notice to him until it's granted." It took a few tense days, but the judge approved it. Mark was barred from coming within 500 feet of Helen, her workplace, or my apartment. The cops served him the papers, and for the first time, Helen breathed a little easier. But the fear didn't vanish overnight. She'd still jump at the sound of a car door slamming outside or freeze when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "What if he ignores it again?" she'd whisper in the dark hours. I'd reassure her as best I could, but I knew words only went so far. In those early days, Helen opened up more about her past, piece by piece, like she was testing the waters. One evening, as we sat on the back steps watching the sunset filter through the trees, she told me about the good times first, the way Mark had swept her off her feet in college with promises of adventure and stability. "He was charming back then," she said, her voice distant, "but after we married, it changed. Little things at first, criticizing my clothes, my friends. Then the jealousy, the control. The first time he hit me, I convinced myself it was a one-off." She described the isolation, how he'd cut her off from her art students, monitored her phone, turned every argument into a physical threat. I stopped painting because it made him angry, said it took time away from him. I lost myself, Miles, became this shell, always walking on eggshells. Hearing it all stirred something protective in me, a mix of anger at him and admiration for her strength in leaving. "You're not that shell anymore," I told her. "Look at what you've survived." She managed a small smile, but her eyes held shadows. To help her reclaim some of that lost self, I encouraged her to start job hunting. "You were a teacher," I said one morning over breakfast. "Maybe something with art or books? Portland's full of creative spots." She was hesitant at first, worried about background checks or Mark finding her, but Carla assured us the order would hold. Helen polished her resume, highlighting her teaching experience and her portfolio of sketches she'd started rebuilding in my notebook. Luck struck about 2 weeks later. She spotted a help wanted sign at a cozy independent bookstore downtown called Page Turner's. a quaint spot with creaky wooden floors and shelves overflowing with used books. The owner, Linda, a warm woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a penchant for herbal tea, interviewed her on the spot. Helen shared just enough of her story to explain the gaps in her work history, and Linda, who'd volunteered at shelters before, nodded understandingly. "We all need second chances," she said. Helen got the part-time gig, stocking shelves, recommending reads, even leading a small art workshop for kids on weekends. Her first paycheck felt like a victory. She insisted on buying groceries that night, making a simple stir-fry that tasted better than anything, because of the pride in her eyes. With the job came subtle changes in Helen. She bought a few new outfits from a thrift store, jeans that fit properly, a soft sweater in her favorite blue. She decorated her corner of the couch with pillows she'd sewn from old fabric scraps and hung one of her sketches on the wall, a simple drawing of the backyard garden in bloom. "It's starting to feel like home," she admitted one day, blushing a little. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Our routines intertwined more, mornings with shared coffee where she'd tell me about a funny customer at the store, and I'd gripe about a stubborn repair job. Evenings turned into shared tasks, her watering the plants while I fixed a leaky faucet, or us experimenting with recipes like spaghetti aglio e olio, laughing when the garlic burned. The shift towards something deeper happened gradually, almost without me noticing. One rainy afternoon, I came home early to find her at the table, focused on a canvas she'd bought with her first wages. It was a portrait of me, sitting at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, looking out the window. The details were spot on, the crease in my brow, the way my hair stuck up after work. "Helen, this is incredible," I said, genuinely stunned. She looked up, cheeks flushing. "I wanted to capture you. The way you think when you're quiet." I teased her lightly. "Do I really look that serious all the time?" She laughed, a full, genuine sound that lit up the room, free of the sadness that used to linger in her eyes. That night, after a movie, some old rom-com we'd picked at random, the air felt charged. We were on the couch, the credits rolling, when she turned to me. "Miles, why haven't you kicked me out yet? With all this mess, Mark, my baggage, you could have walked away." Her voice was soft, vulnerable. I met her gaze, feeling my heart quicken. "Because some people are worth the trouble. And you're one of them. You've made this place feel alive again." Tears shimmered in her eyes and she leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. It wasn't passionate, not yet. Just two people finding solace in each other. But in that embrace, I knew I'd fallen for her. This resilient woman who'd stumbled into my life and shown me what it meant to care deeply, slowly, without rush. The months after that pivotal night on the couch passed in a steady flow, each day building on the last like layers of paint over a faded wall. Helen's divorce proceedings wrapped up without much fanfare. Carla, her lawyer, handled the heavy lifting, presenting evidence of Mark's violations and history of abuse. The judge granted the dissolution quickly, citing the protective order and police reports. Mark fought it at first, sending angry emails through his attorney, but when the court threatened jail time for further harassment, he backed off. The police kept tabs on him, and eventually he slunk away to some other town, leaving Helen with a final bitter settlement check that she deposited straight into a savings account. "It's over," she said one evening, holding the court papers like they were fragile glass. "Really over." I pulled her into a hug, feeling the tension melt from her body. For the first time, she didn't flinch. With the shadow of her past lifting, Helen blossomed in ways I hadn't anticipated. Her job at Page Turner's became more than part-time. Linda promoted her to assistant manager after seeing how she connected with customers, recommending books that matched their moods or sketching quick portraits for kids during story hours. Helen even started a free art class at the local library on Saturdays, teaching watercolor techniques to anyone who showed up, mostly seniors and young moms looking for a break. She'd come home with paint smudges on her cheeks, eyes bright with stories. This one lady painted her late husband's favorite landscape today. It was beautiful. I'd listen, stirring dinner on the stove, feeling a swell of pride for her resilience. Our living situation evolved naturally without any big declarations. The couch stopped being her bed. One night, after a long day, she simply followed me to the bedroom, slipping under the covers beside me. "Is this okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, pulling her close. More than okay. We didn't rush into anything physical beyond holding each other. Kisses came slow, tentative at first, building from comfort to something deeper. It wasn't about passion overwhelming us. It was about trust, about learning to let someone in without fear. The apartment transformed too. Helen hung her artwork on the walls, vibrant abstracts in the living room, a serene garden scene in the kitchen. We repainted the bedroom a soft gray, bought a real comforter instead of my ratty old blanket, and turned the backyard into a haven. More flowers blooming, a small bench where we'd sit with coffee in the mornings, watching birds flit through the branches. There were still hard days, of course. Helen had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping, convinced Mark was at the door. I'd hold her until she calmed, whispering, "He's gone. You're safe here." And the threats didn't vanish entirely. Anonymous calls that we'd report, shadows that turned out to be nothing. But we faced them together, calling Carla or the cops when needed, leaning on each other. I opened up more too, sharing about Sarah's leaving, how it had left me guarded, afraid of getting close again. You changed that, I told her one afternoon as we walked through a nearby park, leaves crunching underfoot. You showed me it's worth the risk. The deeper bond grew from those shared vulnerabilities. Helen's laughter filled the space now, genuine, infectious. She'd tease me about my terrible cooking attempts, like the time I burned toast so badly the smoke alarm went off, and we'd end up ordering takeout, eating on the floor picnic style. I found myself planning little surprises. A new set of paints from the art supply store, tickets to a local gallery exhibit where she could lose herself in the colors. In return, she'd draw me, candid sketches of me fixing a gadget at the table or reading in bed. You're my muse now, she'd say with a shy smile. One crisp autumn evening, as wind rattled the windows and we sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, Helen turned to me with a thoughtful expression. The room was warm from the heater, the scent of her lavender tea mingling with the faint aroma of rain outside. Miles, she said softly, if that first morning, when you woke up and saw me, if you'd told me to leave right then, would you regret it now? I set my mug down, taking her hand in mine. Her fingers intertwined with mine naturally, like they'd always belonged there. No, I replied, shaking my head. Not for a second. If I'd sent you away, I'd have missed all of this. You, us, this life we're building. I'd have stayed in my rut, fixing things for other people, but never for myself. Her eyes glistened and she leaned in, resting her forehead against mine. I feel the same. That night, I was at my lowest, ready to give up. But you gave me a chance. More than that, you gave me hope. We held each other then, the world outside fading away. It wasn't a dramatic moment, no fireworks or grand gestures. Just two people acknowledging how far we'd come, from strangers thrust together by desperation to partners choosing each other every day.